How's it going, Carmen?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. How's this term going?
Pretty rough, but I'm hanging in there. How about for you?
A very unique challenge.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding.
Oh, so, any questions for me?
I do, but I didn't know if I should like do you want me to ask now?
That's totally up to you. We're here. Why not take advantage of the time? You've got some one-on-one help right now.
Well, one question I have absolutely no idea how to answer was the leap year one that you wrote that little note about.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know really what a leap year is, to be honest. I know it has something to do with what month? Something like a day only happens once every 6 years or something.
Or yeah. So February has 28 days every year, except every 4 years it has 29, and that has to do with the fact that it actually takes the Earth 365.25 days to work its way around the sun.
Okay.
And so if we just had 365 days in a year, our calendar would slowly shift off. And so you'd have winter in June, after a very long time. And so by adding in one extra day every 4 years, it kind of auto corrects for that problem. And so what that problem is getting at, so for that, you have to think that in the 1990s, there were 10 years. There's 90s, 91, 92, 93, all the way up to 99. Each year having 365 days in it. So there's 3,650 possible days for someone's birthday. But as I noted, there's 2 leap years in the 90s. So that actually means there's not 3,650, but there's 3,652 possible days.
Okay, so you add 2 because there's 2 leap years. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I had no idea how to figure out how many days there was. Yeah.
Yeah. How's it going, everyone?
Good, how are you?
Good. So we just started off with, getting some questions. We're just going to kind of go and the way this is going to work is as people come in and drop out, whatever, we're just here answering any questions you guys have. There's no kind of structured, I'm not going to go through the review problem by problem or anything like that. It's just an opportunity for you guys to ask whatever questions you have, whatever problems you need help with. So if any of you haven't used Zoom or anything like that, if you click on, let's see here, there should be a little thing that says participants. If you click on that, it'll pop up a little list, usually on the right-hand side, of all the people. And at the bottom, there should be a thing that says raise hand, and I'll kind of do that myself. And if you do that, that can just act as, raising your hand in class, and I'll know to kind of call on you and check and see what kind of questions you guys have. So does anyone have any questions? And if you want to turn your cameras on or off, mute yourself or whatever, that's totally fine, however you want to go. But yeah, so does anyone have any questions they want to fire off with?
Yeah, how long do you think the test will be?
As far as the number of problems, I don't know. I haven't finished writing it yet. I've still got kind of some condensing to do and some things to do for this different format. The time limit will be 1 hour and 20 minutes, so it'll be a 2-hour test. And you should be able to complete the test well within that time frame.
Is it still going to be on the 8th or is it going to be later?
So it's going to be posted. So the way it's going to work is I'm going to post on the 8th. I'll make the test available, and you'll have from the 8th until the 11th. So if you look at kind of the calendar for our class, you'll see that this test one is from the 8th to the 11th. So it'll be available in that window. So whatever time in that period works for you, that's when you take the test. So rather than saying you have to take it on the 8th at whatever time, since we don't have a time structure like that, I want to just kind of give you guys a free rein to answer whenever you need to. Yeah. As far as material you can have on the test, I'm sure that's probably a question. Obviously, I'm not in your house, so I'm not going to be, controlling this. So I'm kind of being pretty loose with it. I basically just ask that don't Google the question, and otherwise we're good. So open book, open note, calculator, that's all fine. Just don't use, Google. So anyone have any questions? If you have a question on the review, I'd be happy to answer that. Or if you have questions about homework problems or just any random general questions, whatever you guys want to talk about. Oh, and quick note, I did open a practice test, test one practice under that by the reviews. It is not like a practice test in the sense that if you go through and do that, that's what the test is going to be like. It's just an opportunity for you to get in there and get some experience with how the testing structure of MyOpenMath is. So that way you don't get to the test and accidentally hit like exit out and you like cancel the test after you did one problem. So it's just there for you to kind of practice and get used to that kind of the format of it, the way it looks, the structure. There's a countdown clock, all those sorts of things. So not like the problems are not practice test either. I think I did like basic arithmetic, like 2 + 2 type stuff, but it's just a practice for you to get comfortable with the format of MyOpenMath tests.
Do you have an idea of what it's gonna look like if we like don't do well on this test, like what we could do to make it up, or in any future tests?
I mean, just like in any other class, if you don't do well on the test, obviously it's gonna raise the bar a little higher for you on the subsequent tests. If you look at the syllabus, you can see the way the grading structure is broken down, kind of how heavily weighted the tests are. And so, I mean, that's kind of where I would start with looking, but especially on this first test, I wouldn't be too crazy stressed. The latter tests are going to definitely be a little more important. So the way the syllabus breaks the test down, and I think I gave a description. I did not. So if you look at the syllabus, it says that your discussion posts are 10% of your grade. So those are those weekly discussions. Online homework is 40%. So that's a big piece of the grade, right? That's a really kind of, a crucial part of learning. The way I'm going to do the test for these first 3 tests, I'm going to average out your grade. So I'll average the percent you have on the first 3 tests, and that is going to be what goes into that 30%. So if you get, say, 60% on this first test, 70% on the next, and 80% on the third one, that averages to a nice little 70%. And so you will have 70% on your tests, kind of that test percentage, that test score. So overall tests are only 30%. So if you really bomb this test, which hopefully none of you guys are going to do because you guys are all studying and working hard, right? It's really not going to tank your score as long as you improve on the next test. So awesome. We've had some more people coming in. Welcome, guys. The way we're going to work this is if you guys have any questions or anything like that, just use the little raise hand button. If you click on participants, and then it'll pop up a little thing, and at the bottom there's a raise hand, and I can call on you from there. So does anyone have any questions? Cyrus.
So I was curious about showing work.
Yeah, so the way I'm going to do that, it's kind of unique the way to do that on here. I've been kind of toying with different things and trying to practice with it. I think most of the questions I'm going to have are going to be pretty straightforward calculation type questions, as far as there's going to be a single numerical answer kind of thing, or some answer that is going to be able to be calculated in here. However, show your work is a big piece of it. And so what I'm going to do, I think, is I'll either create a separate kind of thing, or I'll see if I can make an add-on at the end of the test for you to submit your kind of written work. And the way I envision that kind of going would basically be, you guys would be writing your work organized and neat on a separate sheet of paper. And then if you can scan it, otherwise use your cell phone, just like take a picture of it, and you would just upload that there. And so then I would be able to go back through and say, you missed problem 3. I could go to your work and I could look at what you did and be like, oh, you did everything right, but it looks like you accidentally hit divide instead of multiply in your calculator. It's like a simple mistake like that. I can give you partial credit back on those points.
Okay. And then will it be listed, let's say if we're not supposed to show our work on 1, but we're supposed to show our work on 2, it will say, or do we show our work on everything?
It's going to be kind of, there's going to be some questions that are obvious that you show your work. And there's going to be some questions that are kind of not show your work, like, definitions, say, matching the definitions for the 5 sampling methods, you can't really show your work on that. And so it's going to be kind of obvious. Show as much work as you can. The way I always think of it is whatever work you show me is that many opportunities for you to get partial credit if you get the problem wrong. Whereas if you show me nothing, then you either get all or you get nothing.
Okay.
Great question. Anyone else? Carmen.
I was kind of confused on discrete and continuous data. It made sense when you explained it in the video, but then some of the practice questions kind of made me not so sure anymore.
Sure, yeah. Discrete and continuous data is really kind of weird. It can be kind of both, depends on the way you do things, but typically the way to think about it is discrete data is data that kind of has these kind of hard jumps. So if you think of like shoe sizes, you're either an 8 or an 8.5, right? There's no 8 1/4. There's nothing in between. So that's a discrete type of data point. Whereas continuous data, there is no gaps. It's just every single value in between any two numbers can be a part of it. So that's the easiest way to think of it. If you think of it like continuous is just, it's like a smooth slide. It goes, there's no bumps, there's no jumps. Whereas discrete data is like stairs. It kind of has these jumps.
So, because the cost of something in one of the problems was discrete, but the weight of a backpack was continuous, and both of them were like not a whole number, which is, I think, the main thing that's confusing me.
Sure. And so when we think of these jumps, right, we typically think, oh, 1 to 2 to 3. But a jump could be from, say, $1.98 to $1.99. Right? I can't charge you $1.98.5, right? Even though the gas station tries to, tack on that 0.1 of a cent kind of thing, right? So there's jumps from one penny to the next penny, and so that's why that would be a discrete cost. Whereas the weight of a backpack, you could weigh 10 pounds, you could weigh 10.1 pounds, you could weigh 10.11 pounds. And so there isn't any jumps there. It can be any continuous thing. And now what's really weird, and this is something that will come up again later in the term when we talk about random variables, these things like weight of a backpack, if I just say the weight of a backpack, that's continuous. But if I say the weight of a backpack rounded to the nearest pound, now that's a discrete variable or a discrete data value. Because now we're saying, okay, it's either 10 pounds or it's 11 pounds, nothing in between. Does that make sense? So the wording in the problems is really kind of crucial to how these go. You have to make sure that you're really kind of careful and paying attention to any sort of rounding things or any like to the nearest or anything like that. So yeah, great question. All right. Anyone else have any other questions? And then once you guys, if I've answered your question, if you click the raise hand thing again, it'll lower your hand. So your hand stays raised. If you have another question, throw it back up. But so Cyrus, okay, you're good. All right. So if you have a question, you want to raise your hand, right? That's just over in participants. At the bottom, it says raise your hand. If you can't find that, just unmute yourself and shout it out. So for those of you guys that have come in, this is just your time to ask me any questions you want and get that immediate feedback of me talking to you rather than me trying to type out an email. So if you have questions on homework, reviews, tests, anything like that, let me know. Yeah, Carmen again. Oh, you're muted, Carmen.
I got lots of questions. I could go
Sounds great.
So one thing about the homework. For the questions that we have to fill in the blank, are you going to grade those later?
Yeah, any question that's a fill in the blank thing, if it doesn't grade automatically, it's something that I will go back and fill it. There's some short fill in the blanks that I can have it kind of search for keywords. Like this word is present, it'll give you points. But for the most part, it is something that I go back in after the due dates and I go back and give points and correct those. Is there an example of a problem like that you can think of, or?
Not exactly. I can't remember the problem off the top of my head, but I just know that there was that.
There wasn't, yeah. Perfect.
On number 8 of the test 2 review,
Mm-hmm.
there was a question asking about the probability of pulling a face card and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a typo on the test, or maybe I don't understand.
So the problem is if you pick a card at random from a well-shuffled deck, what is the probability that you get a face card or a spade? So this is
okay. I didn't read the or a spade part. Sorry.
Yep. So that or a spade. So this is going to be an example of the addition property of probability. So we are looking at the probability of event A plus the probability of event B minus the probability of event A and B, right? So if we use that kind of formal calculation. And so a standard deck of cards, right? There's 52 cards. There's 4 face cards for each of the 4 suits. So there's 16 total face cards. So that means the probability of getting a face card is 16 over 52. Now a spade, there's 13 spades. There's a quarter of the deck is spades, so there's 13 over 52. And so we would have 16 over 52 plus 13 over 52. And then we'd have to subtract off the number of the probability of getting a base card that is also a spade, which would be 3 out of 52. I think I said 4. I meant, so sorry, for the face cards, there's 3 face cards, not 4. So that's 12 out of 15,
yeah.
not 16. Another way to do this problem, right? So a deck of cards is a pretty kind of easier thing to deal with. And so sometimes we can just think through this and directly kind of count these, right? So we know there's 13 spade cards. So then we can simply think, well, how many face cards are there that aren't a spade? Well, there's 3 of each suit, and there's 3 other suits. So there's 9 more face cards out there. So that gives us a total of 22, or 13 plus the 9 gives us 22 cards that are either a face card or a spade. And so then that would just simply come down to 22 over 52. And whatever then that reduces down to. Does that make sense? Awesome. Anyone else have a question? We can come back to Carmen if no one else does, but if anyone else has a question, raise your hand or unmute yourself and let's fire away. All right. Carmen, back to you if you have another one.
So if I was told on the test to draw a histogram, like on the practice test, I think number 22 it was, would it be wrong if my first instinct would be to draw a relative frequency histogram, or does it have to be like, does that make sense?
So, I mean, it depends on what question asks. If it says draw a histogram, typically that would be, that's kind of a generic term. And so I would usually ask the question like, so the question on 22 actually gives us a frequency table. And then it says, using that, construct a histogram. And so that would want to be a frequency histogram. Now, the only difference between a frequency histogram and a relative frequency histogram is the values on the vertical axis. So in a relative frequency histogram, the values on the vertical axis are percents, whereas in a frequency histogram, the values on the vertical axis are actual counts. And that's it. Otherwise, the shape is the exact same. The horizontal axis is still the exact same. And so if you created a relative frequency one and you went, oh, that needs to be a general frequency, just a frequency histogram, you could just change those percents into the actual kind of numbers that they came from. Yeah. So while we're getting the next question up, let you guys know, like, this is not mandatory. So if you came here thinking like this was a required thing and you're being graded for this, it is not. It is purely for you guys, whatever questions you have, whatever help you want. So if you guys want to hop off or hop on or whatever you want to do, it's up to you. So this is just a chance for you guys to get direct answers from me in at least an immediate verbal format, not an email.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the test review, are there any answer sheet to it to check my?
Yeah, for the test 1 study guide and test 2 study guide, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, The last pages are all the answers.
Oh.
That's why all those questions are multiple choice. It's the system I use to create those study guides, multiple choice questions. It creates an answer key really quickly and easily. And so all of the answers are down there. So you just have to kind of scroll down. You can see them all.
And where do I find the test?
So the test is not up yet. When it is up, so if you go to our My Open Math page and go down to where you see where the review was, right now if you do that, you'll see there's another thing in there that is a test one practice. For those of you that didn't hear earlier, that is just something to familiarize yourself with the way My Open Math test works. So when you're in there and kind of working through that system, that way you don't accidentally submit your entire test after only one question. But right below that test one practice is where your test will show up on the 8th. So that test will show up at midnight on the 8th. So in other words, if you were staying up Thursday night studying and cramming and we're up past midnight, you'll see that test pop up there at 12 o'clock a.m. Friday morning, technically.
Okay. And when is it due?
So you'll have 2 hours to take the test, and you just have to do it anytime between the 8th and the 11th. So you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to take that test.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Good questions. Any other questions? All right. Well, Carmen, do you have another question for us?
I have one more that's not really, I mean, so in question 19 on the first test, it asks if the weights appear to be the same. And I mean, they're not, but they're not like drastically different. I don't know what determines if they're considered relatively the same or not.
Yeah, and so this is really what this is kind of getting at, is kind of this idea of that kind of gap, or in this case, there isn't really a gap, but there's two different things that we looked at. We looked at discarded plastic and discarded metal. And so you can see that kind of the discarded metal kind of has a relative bell shape almost, with maybe a little bit of a right skew. You can see because you have 6, 20, 12, 9, 6. So it kind of would have this shape of kind of coming up and then go down. Whereas plastics had a lot, really, it started out high, kind of went, but didn't go quite as high, and then it kind of very petered out. So they're not drastically different, exactly like you said. I mean, I would say that there might be a slight difference in that the plastics are a little bit lighter than the metal, which is not a real kind of shocking thing, hopefully, to many people. But yeah, there's not a significant difference. So it's not like the pennies in that example that we did, where there is one pennies were up here and some were down here, having that big gap in between. Yeah, great question. Any other questions? Carmen's gotten all hers out. She's good, feeling content for now. All right. So
yeah, thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Now, if you guys come up with any other questions between now and when you go to take the test and you want some feedback, if you want this kind of face-to-face thing, you can always email me to set up an appointment. We can do a Zoom meeting like this. And so kind of it just is up to you on how you want to get that feedback. Email me is always a good one. I get back to you guys as soon as I can. So for the next, it's been about 20 minutes that we've been on this meeting, so I will stay on here until 12:30. So if you guys want to work and look through questions or whatever, I'll be on here if you want to pop in and hang out and ask questions or whatever you want to do. Otherwise, if no one else has any questions, that's all. There's no kind of guided review from me. So it's just up to you guys. So if you guys want to log off, good luck. I'll see you later. Make sure you guys finish Chapter 4 in the week 5 post, and then get that test done when it pops up. All right, guys.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So you give us like a data and it was homework chapter 3, I guess.
Okay.
And we had to do like the sample standard deviation.
Mm-hmm.
And you give us like part 1, part B. If we like I didn't like get it when I was doing it. So
Do you happen to remember which question this was?
yeah, it was like I have this one. It was like all the
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know.
yeah.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. So what that question is getting at is kind of looking at how outliers affect standard deviation. And so to do that, the first thing you need to do is enter all of those data values into your calculator. And so I don't know what kind of calculator you have, but so I mean, to do that, just as we showed, you're just going to go to stat and you get to the list and you just want to edit. Okay. Is that backwards for you guys, or I don't know how to flip? That's good?
Yeah, it's good there.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then you just want to choose edit. And so that's some other things in there. And so then from here, you would just type in all of those data values into your first list. So I'll just type in a couple of them. Okay, so I just typed in the first row because I don't want to spend all the time typing all those in. And so then from there, to get the sample standard deviation, you're going to go back to stat. Okay, and now we want to go over to calculate. And this right here is going to be kind of one of our big entry tips, is that 1var stats. So we'll choose 1var stats. Okay, now depending on which version of the calculator you have, if you have this version, you're going to see something that looks like this. If you just, it may just pop up on your screen and where it just says like 1var stats, and then just that's all you have. Either way, you're just gonna hit enter. And so if you have this, you're gonna hit enter a couple times until you get to the calculate. If it pops up with 1var stats, you just hit enter once and you get this menu here. From here, you can see that it gives us a lot of information. This gives us the X bar, so that's our mean. So that's whatever the mean is. And now, remember, both population mean and sample mean are calculated the exact same way. And so they don't require you to do anything different. So it only lists that one thing here. Below that, you have the sum of all the data values, the sum of all the data values squared. Not really anything we're going to use in this class. The next two things, those are the things you got to look for. So there's that SX and sigma X. So the SX is our sample standard deviation, where sigma X is the population standard deviation. And you can see here, those are different, right? And those had different formulas. And so you got to be very clear on whether you're dealing with a sample set of data or a population set. So in this case, we're told that it is a sample. And so we want to use that SX value for our problem. Now, in this problem exactly, there's the data values go either to integer values or 1 decimal place. So how many decimal places would I take this standard deviation?
It was 3, right?
So we're not going to go 3 on this.
Here it was 2 more decimal places.
So here, I think, yeah, they recorded 2 more. They specified 2 more, but in general, we always go 1 more, right?
1 more, yeah.
Perfect. Yep. So unless otherwise specified, we go 1 beyond the data. So great.
Okay. Okay.
So that was like doing that first part. And so this problem here, it gives us that. And then in part 2, it says, oh, wait, there's actually this other number here. And so to do that, it's really easy. You don't have to retype everything. All you do is you go back to stat. Okay, we go back into edit. And then you can just either scroll all the way down. Okay, oops. You can actually scroll up and it'll jump to the bottom. And then you just add that value in. So I can just add that value down in at the bottom. And by just adding that value in, now I can just do the same thing again. I just do stat. I go over, do 1var stat. And now I get my new standard deviation. And then the third part is like, oh, wait, I was wrong. It's actually this giant number that was the outlier, not the 119. It's 158 or 151 or whatever your numbers happen to be. And so then you would just go and replace that one you just added with this new one. Okay.
And that's gonna be in the test?
It could be.
Okay.
Most likely I wouldn't do something like this that's like these multiple parts. This question here is kind of showing you like how does a single outlier affect the standard deviation of a data set? I could very easily ask you, say, hey, what is the standard deviation of this data set? That is a question I can absolutely ask you. Yep. All right, great question. Any other questions? I saw somebody just hopped on. Is that Abby? Is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, my Wi-Fi wasn't working.
No worries, no worries. So we're just here just kind of answering any questions that you have about the review or the test or homeworks or whatever it is. So if you have any questions, fire away. Otherwise, you're kind of more than welcome to just kind of hang out. At this point, it's just kind of whatever questions you guys have, drive the review. Yeah, King.
So I forgot how to find quartile 1 and quartile 3 for box plot. How do we do that again?
So actually, just right where we were in that one var stats with all that, if you just notice how there's a little arrow here on this last one, if you scroll down, it gives it all to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If you want to do it by hand, if you were that bored with all of this stuff at home, basically what you're going to do is you're going to order the list, order the data set, find the median, and that breaks your list up into a lower half and an upper half, and then you just find the medians of those. But I would use my calculator. I'm not that bored very often.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
No worries. Does anyone else have a question? If you do, just unmute yourself and fire away.
On the first test review sheet, when it's the like first 4 questions, are you just supposed to like determine what's wrong about each question? Like,
Yeah, so we're looking at that sampling method, kind of that idea of like how they collected their sample. And so it's asking you, is it sound? Is it a good sample method or is it a bad one? And so like if we look at that number 2, we have 38% of adults in the United States regularly visit a doctor. This conclusion was reached by a college student after she had questioned 520 randomly selected members of her college. So what's wrong with that?
they're only college students, right?
Right. So this student is making a claim about adults in the United States.
Yeah.
But she only looked at students at her college.
Yeah.
So it's not representative. I mean, you know, her one college here, whereas the entire United States, not to mention at a college versus anywhere.
Mhm.
So how could you improve that survey? What's one thing you could do to improve that? Well, we'll say that whole statement. What's one thing you could do?
One thing, of course, is go out more, like go to other public areas and question other adults. That's a start right there. And I think it's already, that's a big number, 520. That's a good number of people. I don't really know another way she could better that survey.
What's one thing, instead of changing the survey, there's one thing you could do that would make what she did perfect and everything exactly and everything a great study. What could she change? Who did she survey?
Members at her college.
But who is she talking about?
Adults in the U.S.
States. So if she changed adults in the United States to 38% of students at this college or visit a doctor, then that's a great survey, right?
Okay.
Surveyed 520 randomly selected people from the college, making a reference about that college's population. That's a great survey, right? So by changing your claim there, So sometimes your survey or whatever you do, the way you collected that data, isn't really representative of this larger population, but it could be really representative of a smaller population.
Okay.
So
I see that.
yeah, that's not something necessarily that I would be looking for on a problem like this. That's just kind of food for thought, kind of thinking about when you're doing these things.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. Why are you putting the because you put two study guides for test number 1 and then 2?
Mm-hmm.
Because you put that one, the number 2, because it's gonna be both in one, or how that it's gonna work?
So when I do this class in person, I usually chapters 1, 2, and 3, I usually spend 1 day on. And so we normally meet twice a week. And so normally your first test is the second day of the second week. And that's what review 1 is covering, is those first 3 chapters. But because I wanted to give everyone kind of this little bit of a cushion coming into this term to kind of adjust to how things are going and kind of gather a routine. And so I changed kind of the way my tests are in this class. Instead of doing chapters 1 through 3, I included 4 into that. And so rather than trying to retype out all these questions, because the raw form of these reviews are on my computer on campus. So instead of that, I just said, hey, here's these 2 reviews, do all this and these problems here. So when it comes time for test 2, your review for test 2 will be the rest of test 2 review study guide, as well as stuff from a test 3 study guide that I'll give you. And so, yeah, so I'm basically taking the reviews that were from were broken up differently test-wise for face-to-face class. And I'm just kind of, saying here, do these problems and these problems. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have one question about the exam because you probably already answered this and it's probably pretty obvious, but I just wanted to make sure. What day is the exam exactly?
So the exam's going to post on Friday. So it'll be 12 a.m. Friday. So in other words, kind of midnight Thursday night, the exam will post up there. And it'll be right below the review and stuff like that, right below the review and the test 1 practice. And it'll be available until Monday at 11:59 p.m. So you can take it anytime, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah, because everyone's kind of got crazy schedules and we're not doing a real fixed class, I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to take it whenever it fit into your schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. How's it going, Martha? Martha?
Good, thank you.
How are you?
Good. Sorry, I totally forgot it was at 11:30.
No worries.
Okay.
So we are just kind of working through and answering any questions you guys have about the review. It's just kind of as you go, as you have questions, whatever you want, fire away. So if you have any questions, fire away and I'll answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another question. So do you remember when, well, I'm confused when you talk about the multiplication rule?
Mhm.
Because I know like we don't like you tell in the video that you do for the chapter that we don't have to count twice something because the number is gonna be different. How'd that work? I guess it was like two circles that
Oh, okay. So that's the addition rule. So here,
yeah.
you guys are gonna go for a quick little ride. We'll go chalkboard up. All right. So this is the addition rule. And so you know that problem we talked about earlier with the face card and the spades, right?
Yeah.
So if these are our face cards, and this is spades, okay? So this is the addition rule. And so what's happening here is, here's all of the face cards, all 12 of the face cards. And here's all 13 of the spades. But in here, these are our 3 face cards that are also spades, right? So in this circle, there's 12 things. And in this circle, there's 13. But the problem with just adding them up and saying, oh, there's 25 total, is there's 3 things that are in both.
Okay.
So in other words, this 12 includes these, and this 13 includes these.
That one. Okay.
And so another way we can think of it, if we think of like the event space of a dice, it kind of gets away from the Venn diagram idea. So rolling a standard 6-sided die, can you see that? Yeah.
Yes.
So let's say our 2 events, we'll say A is getting an even, and B is getting something less than 4. So I want to find what's the probability that we get A or B. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to underline anything that falls into event A. So event A is getting an even number. So that's 2, 4, and 6. Event B is getting something less than 4. So that's simply 1, 2, and 3. So for each of these things, there were 3 simple events, right? But we don't want to say, oh, this probability is, well, there's 3 ways to get A, 3 ways to get B, 6 total, so that has a probability of 1, right? Because that's not right. The problem is that we double counted our 2. And so we have to subtract that off. So when we're doing this, we'd have to do 3, 6 plus 3, 6 minus 1, 6. And that would give us our correct probability of 5, 6. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
And what about the multiplication one?
So for multiplication, we talked about independent. So with those circles, if the 2 circles, if there's nothing in here, we call those disjoint.
Okay.
Right? Or mutually exclusive was a big term we used. For the multiplication rule, we're looking for things being independent, right? And so for the multiplication rule, we're looking at event A, then event B.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not that we're looking for A and B in the sense that they both happened at the same time. We're talking about two trials. So we did it once, then we did it again, and we're looking for what probably that A happened, then B happened.
Okay.
Okay. And so this probability is simply the probability that A happens, because that's, the first trial, the probability that A happens is really all on its own. And then we multiply this by the probability that B happens, given that A has already happened. So we're saying, okay, if A happens first, what's the probability that B happens next?
Okay.
And so that's what this conditional probability does for us. It's the probability of B given A. And the reason why that's important is, especially in something like with cards, where if we're pulling two cards and we're not replacing that first card we picked, right? So that's that without replacement thing. If we have replacement, then it is independent events, and the probability of B given A is the same as the probability of B, because A didn't affect it because we put it back in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone else? All right, you guys, we've got about 20 more minutes in this session that I'm going to kind of hang out here for. So if you guys have questions, fire away. Otherwise, feel free to work or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I was looking at number 31 on the first test review, and I was
Yeah.
kind of confused how you would go and how you would do this one, because it's like very large numbers. I kind of get like a little iffy when it gets huge.
So what it's asking us to do is find the z-score,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So the z-score has that really nice, easy formula where we just take, so the equation itself, the formula says z equals x minus x bar over s, or similarly x minus mu over sigma, depending on whether we're doing the population or a sample.
Yeah.
What that really boils down to, just to put it in the really simple terms, is it's our data point, whatever that is that we're looking at, minus the mean divided by the standard deviation.
Oh,
So with this
okay.
problem, we're told that a department store on average has daily sales of $28,372.72. So that's our average. So that's our mean.
Mhm.
The standard deviation of sales is $2,000. On Tuesday, the store sold $34,885.21 worth of goods. So that's our data value. That's the one. That's that single point we're looking for.
Uh-huh.
So what we just have to do is we take that data value and minus the mean. So we take that 34,000 minus the 28,000 number, and then we divide by 2,000.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Now, when you're doing it in your calculator, you need to be careful. If you type that in exactly as I said, without anything else,
Yeah.
it's gonna divide the 28,000 by 2,000
Okay.
and subtract that number from that 34,000.
Maybe that's
So
wrong.
what you want to do is you want to put parentheses. So the easiest way to type this in would be, so you'd want to do parenthesis first, and then type in 34,885.21. So you would type in that subtraction inside parentheses, and then you would hit divide by
1,000.
2,000.
Okay.
And that gives you that z-score.
All right.
So it gives us a z-score of 3.26. Now the rest of that question is, was Tuesday an unusually good day? So what do you guys think? Was that unusually good?
It doesn't look good. I mean, I'm not a store owner, so I don't know how to determine it, but
Well, we're using statistics to determine this.
that's true.
Remember, what was our cutoff for something being an unusual value?
Hold on, I have mine. Isn't it? That's like that one graph we made, right? That's like a hill, and then it has like the 34%.
So that's the empirical rule. That's definitely something you want to make sure you have. I would honestly, for this test, I would write that on a nice clean sheet of paper and have that off to the side on its own so you don't have to flip around to find it. That's a big thing you're going to need. So our requirements for something being an unusual value, we had that like a rule of thumb and stuff like that. But it's 2 standard deviations away. Anything outside of 2 standard deviations is considered an unusual value. Not necessarily an outlier, but unusual. So since a z-score is a simple calculation of how many standard deviations away we are, a z-score of 3.26, that means that we are over 3 standard deviations above the mean. So that would be an unusual value. That would be an unusually good day.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when we're doing these questions, then it's asking things like, is that unusually good, unusually bad, anything like that, right? You're not answering that in the context of the store owner. You're answering that in the context of a statistician.
Oh, okay.
So, yep, good question.
So are we going to be able to have like a note card of notes on this exam, or what is?
You need to tell me when you're doing the test. I'm going to come to your house. I'll have a mask. It'll be okay, and I'm going to make sure you don't have any. No, so obviously I can't do that. And so rather than telling everyone like you can only have one note card or nothing, and then having all you good students listen to me and do it that way, but then having some bad students cheat and have everything, I'm just opening it up. It's open book, open note, open. It's basically everything, but don't Google the question.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So that honestly, now that can sometimes be more dangerous than saying here have a 3x5 note card, because you're like, I have all of my notes, but then for every question you're going through all of your notes trying to find these things and you're wasting time. So it's never a bad idea to create a note card for a test. It's a really good study skill. There have been so many times I've created note cards for tests, and then I get to the question on the test, I'm like, oh, that's on my note card. Oh wait, I remember it because I just wrote it on my note card this morning or yesterday or last night, and I never even need to look at my note card. So just the act of creating a note card is a really good study skill.
And you said that the exam will be timed?
Yeah, you're going to have 2 hours to do it. You'll have an hour and 20 minutes. And if you go to My Open Math right now, where there's the test review, right below that is a test 1 practice. And that's just something for you to get practice with the kind of the structure and format of a My Open Math test. It's not saying that these are the problems I'm going to ask you. It's just so that way when you get on the test, you're not figuring out how to do the math problems and trying to make sure you click in the right spot or do that whole thing. So,
okay.
And that's something you can just do over and over and over again. It's something you can just get that practice on.
I was going to ask just to make sure the test is on Friday, right?
We'll post on Friday,
Okay.
and it's due by Monday. So you can take it anytime, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. You have any time that works for your schedule within that time period.
Okay. Okay. Any time of the day, whatever, right?
It's online, so if you want to do it at 2 a.m, if that's
Okay.
when you're awake and when you're feeling
I'm
mathy,
ready.
go for it.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
So we can email you for office hours, right? So if we get stuck on the question on the review, or we just feel like we need more help, can we just email you and set up office hours?
Always.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. You can always email me and say, hey, I need some help. And what I always recommend is give me like at least like 3 times or like a window of time. And I can send you something back. So, and I'll send you an invite for a meeting like this, and we can have a Zoom face-to-face meeting. Or if it's a simple question like, hey, I'm stuck on number 5,
Uh-huh.
I can try and give you an email explanation on how to figure it out. And then if you want to, you can, if that works, that's great. If not, if you want to set up a meeting, so we can do that too and go face to face. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks for all the help. You have a great day.
Absolutely. You too. See you later.
Yes, sir.